That's right. I could smell the hot dogs. I can smell the peanuts. At one point, you can smell the wafting cigar smoke. Somebody sneaking one in there. Oh, I love that sound. This is Paul Cartier, the organist over there at Yankee Stadium. This is an old captured piece of video, though, from 15 years ago now. Still, the sounds and the sights and the smells of opening day. I know many of you, some of you out there, don't give a damn, but guess what? I always will. Because even though it might be devoid of magic, it might be attached to the back of a zombie culture, it used to feed the culture. In some cases, American, a baseball over here in America used to lead the culture sometimes. It was just incredible. An incredible little remnant of the past that I'm grateful to have come up in and still have had some really good times. And I know Jay, you've had those times too.
Oh yeah, man. I remember being at so for people who don't know, I'm originally from Boston, so I remember being at Fenway Park when that great home run chase was on between, I think it was it Sammy Sosa and Mark McGwire.
Yeah.
And they had up on the board their totals, because I think it was towards the end of the season, and they were both approaching the record and who was going to get there first. And yeah, that was a lot of fun, even though obviously neither of those players were players in the Red Sox. It was there was something about that time period. I think we were saying like early. I don't know when that home run chase was. Was that 2000?
2000 or 2001 or something.
Yeah,
it was around there.
Early 2000. Yeah, man. It was a lot of fun.
Dude, I'll tell you, I loved the steroid era.
So that didn't take anything away for you?
No. Well, I mean, at the end of the day, once it all comes out and you take a look at what's going on and what people were doing, the fact that you had, Roger Maris in 1961 doing what he did with the 61 home runs, and then it's just like nobody can touch it for so long. All of a sudden, at the end of the 90s, everybody's heads are exploding. They're fucking getting jacked up out of their minds, and they're playing like May type of baseball.
Yeah.
They are spring chickens in August and September. That's the real thing there. People look at the Mr. Olympia and stuff. We know they're all on gear.
Right.
But I can sauce myself up tomorrow, and I'm not going to look like Ronnie Coleman.
Right, exactly.
I mean, and the same thing goes with as I grew up, I was able to make some kind of rationalizations about what's going on over there. What do steroids do? What don't they do? Is it a good example for children? No. But you know what? Parent your kids. And the other hands there too. The government should never have gotten involved in that.
No.
But it is incredible.
I agree, because when I was in it and I didn't know, it was fun. It was, and so it lost some of its luster when I realized it wasn't real. And so I guess what I'm saying is I wish it was real.
It was enhanced.
Yes. Okay, yeah. It was real, but it was enhanced. I guess I really wish it was, au natural. But I know exactly what you're saying. It was a fun time, man. It really was. That whole, and like I said, for me in the early 2000s, the people forget that's when the Patriots were winning Super Bowls. The Red Sox had finally, in 2004 would finally win a World Series. So it was really a lot of fun. And you're right about the magic part. I think that's what's, for me, that's what is gone and is it's lamented. It's lamentable that it's gone.
Yeah, I know. And whatever. We have to hold on, tell the stories of the past. We are now around a new kind of campfire.
We sound like two old men right now, by the way, talking about the way things were back in the early 2000s.
It's not because I want to resist the fashion changing or something like that. No. What are we saying goodbye to? It's something a lot more fundamental, and it's something that I wish generations coming up right now could understand. Just like I know that the generations before us, they already saw us coming up in a weakened culture.
Sure.
Even though we still had it was still full of life, and it was very experimental, and it was bold, and it really pushed back against a lot of censorship and all that. So we really pushed the ticket in the 90s, at least people who were coming. But
isn't it interesting? Like, I think the younger generations, when they're in the middle of it, they always think they're pushing back against something. But even now, with a little bit of separation, when I look at the younger generation, I realize that they don't realize that they are part of the machine.
That's a good one.
Like, we always thought, and I always use the band Rage Against the Machine because that name is so poetic at this point and ironic in life, because they are the machine. They are on behalf of the machine. But I don't know, when we were kids, we all felt like rebels, and I feel like that's a young thing. But today, it's very clear to see that kids are not the rebels anymore. They're the complete opposite, which is also sad.
Well, it also makes me wonder about all of the water we were carrying that we didn't know. You know, it's not just that, okay, well, it's 2008 or it's 2001 or something like that, and it is now the official changing of the generations, and everybody born after this date is an idiot.
Yeah.
You know, I even look back at, I remember going back to, because I know a lot of people who were far more socially conservative than even our parents were. I mean, they came up as hippies, so that's when things really started going off the rails. But even before them, for people who are already in their 60s, 70s, and 80s and looking at the British invasion and want, the Beatles and that kind of stuff, and they have their thoughts about, what is this going to do to the children or whatever. and I always thought, like, oh, come on, what the hell are you talking about? And then I look back and I say, okay, well, there's a slippery slope. At what point on the slippery slope was the point of no return, where it seemed innocent enough, but it was just, it's seeds germinating, and, things that started off as, just some things that started off as an innocent expression of teenage angst or whatever the hell else, eventually rooted into something that lasted and then mutated into, I mean, we're at the tail end of something that looked innocent a long time ago. I always wonder, where was that line? You can't pinpoint it.
No. It's malleable. And that's the thing is, that's just so interesting, because then at what point do you have enough perspective to be able to identify it? And because you don't want to always clamp down on things, because some things are organic, but we were just talking about this offline. What is left that is actually organic? I mean, like world events, the British invasion of the Beatles. I know people that don't think that was organic. So it's just fascinating when you have some perspective to look back. And I really do wonder what's going to happen with this generation, because they have the ability to tip it one way or the other. I really do believe that.
Yeah.
There's no clear line of demarcation, but I will tell you that I think now I look at social happenings as sort of unofficial lines of demarcation. Like COVID is the perfect example of where you fell on that tells me a lot about you. And unfortunately, like with the people I work with, if I can predict based on one piece of data on you, if I can predict how you're going to respond to every other situation, then you are being influenced. Because in a free-thinking society or in a free-thinking human, I shouldn't be able to predict all of your patterns, right? I mean, I could see patterns, but I shouldn't be able to predict all of your behavior. But I'm telling you, Frank, I work with a bunch of NPCs. I know based on very little information what they are going to say about everything. And that freaks me out, because I know I'm not, omniscient. How can I know that?
Here is something else. To add a second half to that coin, even though it's not the same coin, I don't think, but it's I don't know, it's the same pocket of change. Whereas you can probably tell everything that they're going to say, and you know exactly where they're going. They can only mischaracterize everything that you're coming from. Like there's not actually a real. I connect with what leftists talk about with their remedies for society, because I also understand how they misdiagnose society's problems. I'm not a fan of poverty or a fan of children not getting medical attention if they needed it or anything like that. But the thing is that I look at things from purely economic standpoints and sustainability standpoints, and of course they diagnose class warfare, race warfare, gets into everything, war between the sexes. I mean, that's the whole thing here. They look at, we see exactly what they're saying, and we can point out exactly why it makes no sense, and it's actually damaging and it sets us back. And on the other hand, they don't know what we're going to say. They just mischaracterize who we are. Yeah. And that's the crazy thing right there.
It's all about the information and the input. What I've noticed, Frank, is that I don't know whether they know they're doing it or whether, and maybe it's the real flip side of the illusion of choice, meaning like the illusion of choice when it comes to media or the illusion of choice in anything. But these people they intentionally or unintentionally put themselves in an echo chamber. So they think, I know this one woman I work with who only reads the Washington Post, who only listens to NPR, who only, we were talking about books the other day and what books we're reading, and she literally said she was listening to Obama's memoirs on tape. And I'm like, for the love of God, this is why you only can think in this one teeny little box. And she thinks, here's the thing, Frank, she thinks she is a worldly woman with all of these experiences. And even so, her prior career was in academia and she was at multiple institutions. But the problem is academia is a homogenous thing now. So with all of her experience, she has the illusion in her head that she has all this life experience from which to draw upon her conclusions. But the reality is, it's been one constant stream of information which only reinforces her point of view. And she looks at me, she has no, when I know when I say things, and she literally tilts her head like a dog. She has no idea what's outside that little box. And it's a little box, Frank. So I think of this when I deal with clients all the time who genuinely want answers to health problems. But I have to try to figure out what thread I can pull to unravel that sweater, so to speak. It's so hard to find.
Dude, last night I was talking about these fish in Miami. The spinning fish.
Yeah.
As you're describing your friend, I know people just like that. And the first thing that came into my mind was underwater, the footage of fish spinning in a pinwheel.
Yeah.
They probably, do they even know that something's wrong?
Look at all the ground I'm covering.
Yeah. Do they know something's wrong? I don't know, but they're just spinning in one place like, whoa, that's fucked up to see a fish that disabled. Yeah. But I have that kind of, I have those thoughts that cross my mind. Like sometimes Lauren and I, or maybe me, Lauren, and Aurora will go out to a restaurant. And, part of the fun, as you know, going to a restaurant is just sitting back, having these little moments of silence, taking in the surroundings, listening to people around you, whatever. And every time I know I'm sitting next to a bunch of libs, especially if it's two libs getting together for a night. Hey, let's catch up tonight, So whenever I know I'm sitting next to a couple of libs, yeah. I just out of morbid curiosity, I keep a channel open, and exactly what you're saying there. Every once in a while when they talk about the world and they diagnose, it's just that, I don't know. It's just that, cross-legged opening up the New York Times, crawling, this is all there is to life, kind of a, flip. Sometimes I feel almost like their ignorance is cozy to me. Because, if I lived in that world and everything is just so simple, it's like, if we... You know how many
times I've said that it's like the Matrix is the analogy for everything in our world, but wouldn't it be so nice if you could just eat the steak and be plugged back in and never know any... No, it wouldn't once you're out. But, I was thinking about this with the media the other day, Frank. I've never... When we were younger, maybe I just didn't notice it, but the media now reminds me of... Obviously, they're hyper-partisan, more than I ever remember. I just don't recall the media being so clearly... on one side of the political spectrum. But now what I see actually is they're like cackling hyenas where it's almost like the media has become the cool kid lunch table. That was the analogy that came into my head.
Yeah.
Right? Like and you walk by and they're like, look at that loser with long hair. Look at that, like when I was a kid, I was called a band fag, right? Because I played in the band, right? That was a nickname that I got or whatever. And it was like, this just little table of cackling girls or like guys that were being overly, verbose or whatever and always picking on. That's what the media feels like to me now. The table of cool kids. And I never wanted to be at that table, even at that age. I always looked at them like there's just something wrong with them. Like they don't get it. I didn't know what they didn't get. I was too young to understand. But it never felt like I wanted to be included in that. But when you look at the media now, listen to the way they laugh about everything. Whether it's Donald Trump, whether it's the border, whatever it is, they just have this attitude. And the people I work with who live in that world, they have the same attitude like, I mean, it's just you people are just so ridiculous. You just don't understand. And it's just it's class warfare.
You saw the women in Manhattan that are getting randomly punched in the face now.
I heard about it, but I didn't see. Is there like video footage? I mean, I'm seeing subway things all the time, which is why I stopped riding the subway.
Oh yeah, well they're getting the women are getting randomly punched in the face now, and of course they. I don't know what it is. They love going to TikTok to talk about it because of course it is just something that they want to tell everybody. But of course they don't want anybody to ask them, hey, what did the person who did it look like?
Oh, yeah, who did it?
Are they of this country? Are they even citizens? You think? What color are they? The line, no. How dare you even ask that question, bigot? Of course.
Yeah.
Of course, we know what the hell's going on there, but it's still one of those things where even in a situation where you've now experienced a random act of violence, that doesn't shake you to your core, because I think so many of them want to believe it's still 2002, it's still Sex in the City, it's just like.
But this is the thing with tribalism, Frank, and this is what I notice. Again, I believe one of the women that I'm talking about is actually an older woman, so she shouldn't be in that demographic anymore. She shouldn't be thinking the way she thinks, other than the fact that she's left herself. Like, in other words, she has enough life experience to have analyzed the world around her. But I just find it so interesting that because she belongs to the club, whatever that club is, I'm a Democrat, I'm a this, I'm a that. Even in the nutrition world, I try very hard to avoid the camps and the labels, because once you do that, you sort of remove the ability to critically think. And I know that she doesn't actually, I firmly believe that if she were to be presented with the issues, like she's brought up, flippantly will bring up something like the trans issue. And I'm like, I guarantee you she doesn't want sex changes or genital surgery on 3-year-olds. But because she's in that group, she just must recite the talking points. And They are talking points. They are just specific language. And I know that if I sat her down and said, do you think this is okay? She would say, well, of course not. But then still say, but you got to support trans people and trans rights. I'm like, what rights don't they have? Are you talking about the rights to mutilate a 3-year-old? Or are you talking about, tell me what right? So it's so interesting. I think the armor is easy to pierce, but the question is, are they willing to allow it to be pierced?
Right.
And I don't see much evidence that many people want that pierced, because it's uncomfortable, Frank. You expose yourself to information all the time. I do too. I try, but it's an active process. That doesn't happen through osmosis. You don't just wake up one day and experience the world differently. It's something active. You have to seek it out.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Yeah, I know.
Did we just diagnose the whole world in about 15 minutes?
I think so.
Okay.
Well, listen. In the second half, I'm going to read something that I like reading every year on opening day, baseball opening day. And I'm going to make sure I read it around 8:25 so that we have about 20 minutes to unpack that, because it's all about society and standards. It's so much more than it's not just a game. It's a coaching moment and a teachable moment. And I think that we have to talk about the aversion, how the experts are now telling everybody to stay away from the sun. They're telling everybody that fasting is going to kill them.
Everything that's free is dangerous.
Exactly. So we have a lot of great things to talk about tonight. Real quick, here's one. What did I want to do? Oh, speaking of New York, take a listen to this. Here's Mayor Dumbo Adams.
Oh, God.
He wants to roll out, because of there's problems on the subway, like you said. Instead of just throwing people and keeping people in jail, like the guy who was arrested 21 times that killed the police officer the other day. 21 times.
Unbelievable.
A man who lives a life like that should never breathe free air again.
And again, if I said that to that woman that I work with, she would clearly agree with me. But yet she'll still vote for people like Eric Adams.
Right.
I don't know how you square that.
I don't know. But take a listen to this now. Instead of just keeping criminals who obviously have no chance of redemption behind bars, he is now announcing new body scanners, new electromagnetic weapon detection systems.
Awesome.
Now, first thing I want to know is what happened to the trash can police. you remember the robots that they rolled out?
I do.
They look like They look like Grimace.
Yeah.
Like, what happened to that? Huh. I thought that crime in the city would have gone down 30% after they put out the trash can police. But anyway, here's what the Dumbo and his staff of Dumbos had to put out.
I'm proud to announce that we are taking the next step forward in our ongoing efforts to make our subways
I can't stand the way he
safe.
talks.
Efforts.
I can't stand the way he talks, Frank.
Such a dumb fuck.
Ah, God.
And ensure New Yorkers feel safer in the transit system. Today, in accordance with the Post Act, for the use of technology by the NYPD, we'll be publishing the impact and use policy for electromagnetic weapons detection systems here in New York City. This kicks off the 90-day waiting period before this type of technology can be tested and used in our city to help keep New Yorkers safe.
Great. It's not going to do anything. B, by the time the 90-day grace period is up, 90 more people will have been killed.
I'll bet you $10 that this whole policy will go away the first time it wipes somebody's laptop or iPhone on the way into the subway.
Yeah, you're right. Something's going to be up, or somebody's going to find a way to jack the frequency to steal information, or.
You know, I feel ashamed of myself because I remember when he was first elected and he said a lot of the right things, right? A lot like 2008, Obama said, I mean, he didn't do anything. He was like the antithesis of Trump, who did what he said he was going to do, whether you agree with it or not. Obama said he was going to do all these things and then never did any of them. I should have been less fair to Mayor Adams. I should have been less fair. I was trying to be fair, but do you remember you played it on your show and we talked about it, I believe. One of the first things he talked about was how he wanted to switch all New Yorkers to a plant-based centered life.
Yep.
I should have known right then. The guy had a severe B12 deficiency in the brain already.
Oh, I know. Severe. And well, he also made that really weird commercial about, the tap water. You remember that?
Yes.
Hold on. Let's start the show off. During the I have to go find that commercial. We will be right back. It's Jay Gulinello. His links are in the description of this episode to his Substack. It's quite frankly, we've got a wonderful night. It always is a wonderful night when Jay is by. So just get yourself strapped in and we will be right back.
Go ahead, Watchtower.
This is the Joker speaking. You're tuned in quite frankly. When you see the ants, remove your pants.
You let one ant stand up to us, then they all might stand up.
Those puny little ants outnumber us 100 to 1. And if they ever figure that out, there goes our way of life.
It's not about food. It's about keeping those ants in line. That's why we're going back.
Does anybody else want to stay?
Let's ride!
Okay. Dun, 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 dun. Oh man, I really hope that some of you guys and gals still turn it around and join us for book club. This book club right now. We're reading The Robe. It was we picked the perfect. Oh, I mean it's Easter week. That's why I said let's do March 25th. But we got together on Monday, Jay. The 25th is day after Palm Sunday, and the first four chapters end with Demetrius the slave from The Robe being there and seeing Jesus come in on the donkey on Palm Sunday in Jerusalem. And now the second man, I'm on Good Friday now, and it's just like you gotta read. It's so fun. The writing is amazing, and you still have time. And we provided a free PDF for the book. I just want people reading again. It's wonderful. So you still have time. Just get in on it. Let's go. All right. I found welcome to the show, everybody. I found the tap water ad. I think I do. Here it is. Mayor Adams drinks water at Jacob Ree's house to reassure residents. This is 1 year ago from CBS New York.
The officials who now say the water at the Jacob Reese houses is safe to drink after a contamination scare that lasted an entire week. Mayor Adams went there trying to reassure residents by having a
from a week of water woes and mixed messages. Told their tap water was contaminated with arsenic. The city now claims that was not true after all. Attempting to demonstrate that it's now okay to
remember, it's not true. No, there was no arsenic there. This is the same kind of government. You know, Christy Whitman telling people that the air in southern New York was safe to breathe after 9/11. Gave God knows how many thousands more people cancer.
Obama didn't drink the water in Flint, Michigan. Remember, he made that kind of, he was almost joking about it. And he said, yeah, bring me a glass of water. And then he just did like okay, great. Everything's fine.
Yeah. He still probably went and purged afterwards.
Seriously.
Tap and drink water from the faucet was Mayor Eric Adams.
Nothing's better than New York City water.
And they cut it off. Did you see where they cut it off?
Yeah.
I want to see the full footage there.
Where's the spit take?
Yeah.
Better than New York City water.
Look.
Didn't even get. Yeah.
We'll see.
Okay to drink the water, and I want to thank all the city agencies that came together to supply temporary water.
And by the way, Berkey filters should be
banned
because they are officially a pesticide. Because they keep pests out of the water.
Anytime the government needs to convince you that something is good for you and safe, I mean, it should just be apparent.
Just run. Run.
Unbelievable.
You need to run. They are bad, horrible people. And if you think you hate them in the media, you don't hate them enough.
No, you don't.
No, you don't.
You can never hate them enough.
No. So, okay, let's get into that a little bit. First one up is from The Sun. Speaking of The Sun... Headline, hot and bothered, sunbathing for just 1 day, Jay.
Yeah.
For just 1 day increases your risk of a killer heart disease.
This headline is great. Pay attention to the language they're using here.
Increases your risk of killer heart disease and wrecks your immune system.
1 day of sunshine wrecks your immune system. Frank, we talked about this a little bit offline, but the first step in like untangling any of these headline messes is just, does it make sense from a 30,000 foot view? Right? Like, you do not. I often say grad school was amazing for me because it taught me how to read research. It taught me biochemistry. It taught me a lot of things. But just that 30,000 foot view, when you're going into solving a problem, does it even make sense at the outset that we literally have been a species under the sun for however long you think we've been around? Without suntan lotion. Does this make any sense? Would we still be here as a species if it wrecked your immune system and gave you heart disease? Of course, the answer is no. So even from the outset, it is absurd. And I'm going to get into what I think is happening here. And again, this is an associational study. And for you guys who have followed me for a while, you know, association, and Frank has said this too, association is not causation. A lot of things can be associated, but not causal.
Okay. Well, it says... Aside from the risk of sunburn,
that's a whole other thing.
Oh my gosh, or heat stroke. You can. Oh yeah, listen. I had heat stroke once. I think 2 years ago. I'm derailing. I'm going to derail this just for a second.
Joke.
I don't know if it was heat stroke. It was May 21st, 2022, and that's Lauren and I's anniversary. So it was the first beautiful day of the spring, like real beautiful day. I said, you know what? I'm going outside. It's sunny. It's warm. It was probably peaking around 82 or something like that. But I said, I'm taking the shirt off and I am doing the hedges. I'm doing the lawn. I'm doing everything. I'm staying out in the sun and I'm just going to do the yard work and get a nice base tan. Well, I had a nice day out there. Good couple of hours, 4.5 hours of work outside. Felt great. We start getting ready to go to dinner that night. It was definitely the sun that did this to me. I don't know what the hell happened. Maybe I didn't have enough water, but I got to the does it affect your bowels?
Well, I mean, it certainly could if you're dehydrating.
Dude.
Cellular dehydration.
We went to a nice steakhouse for our anniversary. I had a ribeye and whatever, but by the time we ordered dessert, I said, Laura, I don't know if I'm going to be able to do this. She goes, what's wrong? So I've got bad cramps right now. So I went down to the bathroom, whatever. Just to hang out because I just wanted to cramp, whatever. And finally, it felt like, okay, I'm good. Let me go back up there and have my gelato, and we can get the hell out of here. So I was given a reprieve.
Take it to go, Frank. Take it to go.
I wish I did, because as soon as we finished, got outside, we paid and all that stuff, and Lauren's like, "You want to take a walk a little bit?" Yes, let's walk a block. Just let the food get down, and then whatever. As soon as we walked a half a block, where there's no choice to go back, no matter what we do, we have to go all the way around the block to get to the car. Either way, all of a sudden I said, "Laura, we got to go now." It came back. Yeah. I was on the toilet for the rest of the evening. What the fuck was that? That was the sun.
So because you obviously dehydrated yourself, you're losing minerals, and then of course, motion also is something that can initiate peristalsis, which is the process by which the colon removes fecal matter.
Such a bad.
So the movement, that's it's one of those like really interesting cures for constipation. For some people, just getting adequate movement can actually be very beneficial. And then minerals and one of the last things I would ever do is actually fiber. I know it's so counterintuitive, but fiber actually doesn't help with motility. It can actually make it worse, which actually does make sense when you think about it, because fiber just adds bulk.
Yeah.
And if you can't get it out, why would you want to make it bulkier?
Right.
So most likely that's what happened. Dehydration, and that slows down peristalsis, and then the movement and the rehydration and the adding of nutrients. And then once you started moving around, you kickstarted that process back up, and it's the runaway train at that point.
Okay. Yeah. All right, that makes sense.
And so remember, the sun, I'm not saying the sun is not, I'm not going to use the word dangerous.
You can't overdose on it.
But like, again, throughout human history, you just went from 0 to 60.
Right.
That never would have happened. Over the course of time where we were outdoors, we would have been exposed to more and more UVR over the course of time. People say like, oh, I got to get a base tan. Well, I mean, that's kind of like mimicking what would have happened, except for our ancestors, it would have been over a very long period of time. It wouldn't have just, been, okay, the weather's warm, now we go from coats to shirtless. It never would have been like that.
No,
so it's just inappropriate sun exposure. I want people to realize that, because sometimes people get mad, when you say stuff like that. Like, people get angry about defending being out in the sun without sunscreen. They think, like, I've seen doctors be called dangerous and all these stupid words that get thrown around. No, it's responsible sun exposure, and that means a lot of things. But it's just that we do everything in this society. We go from indoors to outdoors. And that's not in accordance with our biology. So I'm advocating, as I go through this, I'll explain to you, responsible sun exposure. Right. Not just 8 hours under the blistering sun and be like, but Jay said the sun was safe. No, it's not like
I know,
that.
This is my first. It was my first day. Yeah. Like I said, my first day out in the sun for the entire season.
Right.
And it was just a lot. I got drunk on it. But anyway, in here they're saying when it comes to your skin, dermatologists have told the sun, that the paper that there's no safe way to tan.
Although I have heard I've seen dermatologists screaming at the sun before.
I know,
you
sons of bitches.
Strange bunch.
Let's see here. Now, research shows that languishing under the sun's scorching rays could also increase your risk of heart disease and hamper your body's immune response. Scientists from the University of Louisville found that just 1 day spent in hot weather was enough to drive up markers of inflammation in the body. Inflammation, which is associated with heart disease risk, is part of the body's normal response to infection or injury. But long-term inflammatory responses that last weeks or months, or which occur in healthy tissues, can be damaging and fuel buildup of plaque in the arteries.
Mm-hmm. Which is all true. But of course, the key word in that whole paragraph was association. So this is it's not based on an actual experiment done with the intention of connecting sun exposure to even sun exposure to inflammatory markers, let alone heart disease. It was another study that was being done on green spaces, and I guess they just happened to use the same cohort and get the blood markers, and then they determined, oh, these blood markers are elevated. These cytokines, these inflammatory markers, they specifically use things like killer T cells in the immune system and something called tumor necrosis factor alpha, which is TNF alpha. And those were elevated, and so they said, well, it must have been the sun, and since those markers are associated with heart disease, therefore the sun increases your risk of heart disease. So it's a lot of logic jumps with very little understanding. But then I started to think. So first it was associational, and I brushed it off, and I said, well, it's ridiculous. But it bothered me, because this kind of stuff bothers me. This is bad science, because that headline is crazy, right? People go, well, I can't get outside in the sun. And do you know how beneficial the sun is? So we could look at something like the MISS cohort, which was 25 or 24,000 women in Sweden who had sun-seeking behaviors. They actually had an associated reduced risk of type 2 diabetes and all-cause mortality independent of physical activity. So remember, associations are not alone predictive of outcomes because there can be many reasons for associations. The famous one I always use, I think I've even used it on your show, is the association between margarine consumption in the state of Maine and divorce rates. Both of those things are tightly correlated and associational in a graph, but they obviously have nothing to do with each other. But a reverse association, meaning people who are intentionally exposing themselves to UV light and sun exposure and are actually having improved health outcomes and all-cause mortality, well, that tells you a huge deal because clearly they're being exposed to the questionable stimuli and they're actually living longer. So that negative association is far more important than a positive association in research. But I want to go one step further. Exercise. So I just decided I'm going to go into the medical literature and I'm going to go just in the last couple of years and I'm going to pull papers with the same markers that they're telling me are associated with heart disease, which is true, but that they're also associated with sun exposure, and then therefore they're making that logical leap. Well, guess what? So I had the thought, and I said, let me go see let me see if this is true. Well, exercise. So Frontiers in Physiology 2020. Natural killer cells in number and activity increase after moderate and intense exercise. White blood cells, C-reactive protein, which is a marker of inflammation, cytokines like interleukin 6 and 10, all increase after exercise. Cytokine Journal 2007, exercise and physical strenuous activity has been demonstrated to increase serum TNF-alpha. That's exactly what they measured. Regular physical training is expected to attenuate such a response. In other words, the more you exercise, it initiates the inflammatory response because exercise is a stress, but it's a hormetic stress, which is negative at first, but then becomes positive, much like I theorize sun exposure actually is. This is the last one from 2023 in the journal Sports. Physical exercise generates a systemic response in the human immune system. It has been observed that cell populations respond to exercise stimuli, especially natural killer cells, whose numbers increase within minutes of starting physical exertion. So what they're saying, but no one ever talks negatively about exercise, but yet the same exact inflammatory markers increase and the same immune response happens in response to exercise that does sun exposure. Yet somehow they make this illogical leap that sun exposure is causing the heart disease and wrecks your immune system.
Right.
You see what I'm saying?
It never goes from negative to positive. It only increasingly gets more negative and damaging.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And even the association, again, I don't believe is correct.
So they're only providing a very loosely knit group of data points on one half of a cycle.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah. And that's the whole theory of hormesis. not really a theory. I mean, it's a sort of a scientific principle, is that the dose makes the poison, which is why philosophically my thoughts on diet, people always ask me, I'm animal based because animal products don't have toxins in them in terms of defense chemicals, while plants do. So that's just, again, another biochemical fact, which is why I don't make plants the base of my diet, because then you're exposing yourself to a ton of plant chemicals. I believe a certain amount of plant chemical is actually beneficial because you get that hormetic response. But the question is, what is the dose? And we don't really know, because some people don't do well with any plant matter at all. I know people who have put autoimmune diseases in remission by staying on a carnivore diet. Now, I don't think humans should be on a carnivore diet, or I should say in the perfect physiological scenario, but they may need it because their physiology has been pushed to a pathological place, and now the carnivore diet is all they can really do. But I don't believe human physiology at a natural state needs that. We would have been opportunists. We would have eaten whatever was available. So it makes no sense that we couldn't eat plants. It makes sense that plants were seasonal and that the dose makes the poison. But I don't know any studies, and I don't believe anybody has any studies on what that dose is. So everyone has to find it on their own. But seasonal produce is the way I approach it, because that's in accordance at least with the seasons of the earth and also your biology. So I know that's a long way around, but I want people to understand when they see papers like this or they see headlines like this, you really have to do some due diligence, because that's very irresponsible to tell people straight up that sun exposure, vitamin D is synthesized through the sun, and that is so important in the immune system.
They're saying they went as far, and this is only the Sun's, the Sun.com's presentation of this. Mm-hmm. Obviously, this was picked up by many sites, and the big thing is that one day of sun exposure.
I know. It's ridiculous.
It's like you're telling us this just as spring is about to kick off. One day, what are we supposed to do? So
I'll tell you what you're supposed to do, Frank. Stay indoors, save lives.
That's what I'm saying. The question there at that point is, all right, here's a sensationalist, shoddy piece of published material or whatever. But the real question is that if that balanced perspective that you just gave right there, or at least just a fraction of what the reality really is, to show how intricate it all is, and it's not just one thing or the other. If that perspective is not there, then what's the point of publishing it? Is it just because it's sensationalist? Is it because, is every writer at the Sun really on the payroll of MI6 to get people to avoid going outside more and more? I mean, what is motivating people to write shit like this that it's just so wild?
Well, my theory is pretty vast on this, and if you notice, the Daily Mail has almost the exact same wording in all this. So I'm pretty sure they're just given their marching orders for whoever their sponsors are, whoever pays for ad dollars, whether it's pharmaceutical companies who want to sell, these companies very often make drugs, but they also make sunscreens, whatever it is. But then you have to take it to the next level, like you and I always do, and you always do in your show. Why is it that everything that would be natural and that I believe is actually deficient in society today, which is nature exposure to natural foods, exposure to natural fats, fasting, which we're going to talk about, these things that were once upon a time just ubiquitous in society because that just was what society was built around. But now in the last 120 years, we've built a very different society around a whole different construct. And in order to support that construct, you need the research to sort of back it up.
Yeah.
So that gets into a lot deeper of a more I see too many coincidences to be able to chalk it up to just bad data and bad science, right? I think these headlines, I don't know what they mean, but I feel like they're always connected in some way, and that thread is always everything natural is bad for you. And so I just can't help but think there's a deeper meaning there, and I leave it up to the audience to decide what that meaning is. But we joke all the time that pretty much whatever advice they give, just do the opposite.
Yeah.
I mean, we've got to that point now.
Speaking of doing the opposite, are you going to be looking directly at the eclipse?
Directly at it, yes.
I'm going to look at it. Now, I told Lauren yesterday. I said I'm looking right at that damn thing.
Whatever happens, it happens.
Yeah, I said if I have to cut on April 9th, if I have to come back on air and I am fucking blind, then I will be shocked, and I will have to wear that on my. I'll have to own that for the rest of my life, obviously.
Yeah.
I just that's another thing that I just don't get. Even like you and Nurse Jenny, when you guys would talk about just waking up in the morning, grounding, facing east, just seeing the sunrise, allowing the sun to fall on your open eyes, just being able to take that in. I see that, I'm like, okay, well, what the hell? If the sun is being over 95% blocked by another celestial object, wouldn't that be even safer to look at it?
So you do have to be careful because it gives you that false sense of security.
Right.
And I do believe that you can't stare at the sun on a sunny day.
No, I know you
physically
can't.
And so I think I do understand that there's probably some merit to that idea that, well, at least what I was always told, I remember this from science class in high school, but now I question everything, so I'm not even sure this is true anymore. But that enough is obscured that makes it easy to look at, but still could be potentially damaging if you stare at it for too long. I mean, I'm going to look at it. I'm not going to. I was joking about actually like physically staring at it for like 5 minutes, but I'm
going to stare at it without blinking for 5 minutes.
Report back, Frank. No, but your point is really true in the sense that I know practitioners and dermatologists who say the phrase, the only responsible amount of sun exposure is no sun exposure. And that is actual quackery to me, yet they think I'm a quack, right? Because people don't understand that light and food are the dictators of circadian biology. Our eyes are connected to light. Your body can tell where you are on the planet and what time of day it is based on the spectrums in the sunlight at that moment, that your body is doing more complex computations than the most complex computer on the planet, and it's all happening completely unconsciously. It's incredible. Food are those cues for your organs, right? Which is why we were saying about eating at midnight is not so good, because you're telling your body it's potentially midday because your liver doesn't have eyes. But the way that the sun communicates with your circadian biology and how it can actually dictate the response to food is incredible. So getting that morning sunlight, getting that midday and that evening sunset sunlight is incredibly important for melatonin production, if nothing else. It sets the melatonin curve to allow yourself to sleep. That's why
if you're boxed up inside of a house or an office building all day, you are depriving your body of any kind of natural sensory perception of where the fuck it is and what time it is and what it should be doing.
And most people I know that do that have massive sleeping issues. They don't go to bed early enough, and they can't because, televisions, this is the only time you'll ever see me at sunset with artificial light without my glasses on. I have blue blocking glasses that I wear.
If I start doing this show with blue blocking glasses, I'm going to become a laughing stock.
So, hey audience, should we do one of those like Super Bowl squares? Like how long before Frank gets the blue blocking glasses on?
If I show up on that, Jay Gulinello told me.
You know what would be interesting though? You could tell the audience, I'm going to try this for 30 days as a sleeping experiment and see if my sleep improves, and have the audience do it with you. I think that would be very interesting. It has improved my sleep, and I use it for clients who are struggling with sleep. A cold, dark room is one of the first tips, but if you're someone like me who spends way too much time on your computer, and like you, who spends way too much time on your computer, blue blocking glasses with the amber lens are really, or if you want to get really dark, the red lens, that'll completely block out, and you'll all of a sudden realize how much earlier in the evening you are tired. Because it will regulate your melatonin production. So just something to consider.
Wow, it's like naturally putting you to sleep.
Yes.
Lulling you to sleep.
Yes.
That's incredible. Well then let's get to the second.
We got a lot of mileage out of that one, Frank.
I know. So let's just finish the first hour on this one, because not only in the because that was around March 20th, about 8 days ago, I started seeing the stay out of the sun articles. But about 2 days before that, around March 18th, is when we started seeing things like this. Where the hell is it? Here's a USA Today or something like that.com. Can intermittent fasting have negative effects? Study finds higher risk of cardiovascular death. They started coming after intermittent fasting. Here's some stuff from the UK's Daily Mail. That was put together by a Dr. William Makis. He said the following. He said that the attack on fasting has begun. Fasting for 16 or more hours per day raises risk of dying from heart problems by almost double, 20-year analysis finds. The UK Daily Mail reported this headline on March 18th of this year. The new research suggests intermittent fasting could be in fact damaging to long-term health. Those who only eat during 8 hours of the day are almost twice the risk of heart attack and stroke later in life, a study found. Now research involving 20,000 adults found those who followed a time-restricted eating plan were 91% more likely to die from cardiovascular disease.
91%. That was the headline from the American Heart Association's own news release. 91%. Think about that number.
I'll tell you what I was thinking about.
Yes, please.
What I was thinking about, because your mind goes there, because you deal in data, and this is like the filing cabinet you have. Me, I saw the sun thing, but between these stories, reading these stories during Lent, they really got me thinking. Because if the Sanhedrin didn't have Jesus killed, all that sun and fasting he would have done, it would have taken him out by 40 anyway. Jesus would have only had like 7 more years left. They could have just
bided their time.
Oh my gosh. Just leave him alone.
How
but all the fasting in the desert,
funny.
It's done. He's done. Well, what do you think about this? 91%. Where does that come from? Break it down.
Oh my God. I don't even know where to begin with this one. It's so frustrating. So again, take a 30,000 foot view and you see a headline like that. That's sensational. 91%? I never see data that convincing. And so I love how they said it was a study. Well, first of all, it's not a published study. So that's one bizarre thing. It was literally a collection of data at an American Heart Association conference, and it was put up on like a poster board. Like it was just a collection of data. So it may be a study at some point, but you know how people you know how like during COVID or whenever any armchair scientist wants to try to shout down your point of view on something, they'll say, show me the peer-reviewed data. Well, this isn't peer-reviewed data. So you can't like peer review when it's beneficial to you and then not like it when it's not beneficial to you. So that's the first thing I want to tell everybody. This is not a peer-reviewed study. It's just data that hasn't been sifted through, we haven't figured out what the confounding variables are. And I'm going to just go through a couple of them. I don't want to go through the whole thing because it will be here forever. But I just want to give you some of the highlights. And then again, I want to go through just a couple of studies that I pulled that showed how beneficial fasting is. So on the very markers that it would have to be associated with to cause heart disease in the first place. So this was, again, unpublished data on people who were at least 20 years old between the years 2003 and 2018, and that they had completed, get this, 2 24-hour dietary recall questionnaires within the first year of enrollment. So this whole thing, all of this data, is based on 2 days of your life, and then they extrapolated that out for an entire year. So again, and no accounting for what was going on in those particular 2 days when you took this questionnaire. And I see no accounting of the actual food eaten. So they are completely discounting all of the data around the actual nutrition, and they're just simply looking at this in these windows. In a less than 8 hour window, in an 8 to 10 hour window, in a 10 to 12 hour window, a 12 to 16 hour window, or remarkably, a 16 plus hour eating window. Frank, do you know what a 16 plus hour eating window means if you're sleeping for like the 8 hours a night?
It means you won't stop. I don't know. You're just eating the entire time you're awake.
Yes. From the moment you go to bed to the moment you wake up in the morning. Now, again, from a 30,000 foot view, just think about how ridiculous that would be, because we never had a food availability environment the way we do now, right? So that would be quite impossible even 150 years ago, probably, right? Like even just go back to Back to the Future, go back to the Old West, right? Like you had your 3 squares. That's about it, right? You're not eating from the second you go to bed. That's what a greater than 16 hour window. And according to them, that's still better than eating in a less than 8 hour window where you could still get your 3 meals. But again, that's what this data is saying. So I'm just trying to point out to you some of the bizarre statistical anomalies that have not been teased out. And that this is what I go through when I look at a study like this.
Oh, it really also just puts into frame again how you take data and then you take real life and actually trying to see what story you're telling with that data.
Yes.
Like you said, 16-hour eating window. It is ridiculous to think. You think about all the time that we spend eating in 16 hours. The fact that all that can be condensed in a little bit more of a well-organized 8-hour window is absolutely, what the fuck is the point? I mean, what? I mean, what do you, the time you spend collectively eating over a 24-hour period, why can't that be spread out over 8 hours comfortably?
There's no reason.
There's no reason.
No.
I mean, you're essentially fasting in between every bite you take anyway.
Yeah.
And the only thing is that when you organize that non-eating time, you're actually giving your body a little bit of a chance to repair itself. And
Frank, we have God, I could talk about this forever. We have biological processes that are only upregulated in the fasted state. Something called the migrating motor complex, which is like, think of it as like street sweeping for your gut. You wonder why we have this epidemic of leaky gut and all these associated gut dysbiosis diseases. Well, maybe that's because most people are eating in a greater than 16-hour window because they're told if they eat their 3 meals in an 8-hour window, they're going to have a 91% increased chance of dying of heart disease, right? That's just one process. And I'm going to go through a few of the other ones. But I don't want to leave the data because you're making...
Look, this is the meme that gets around. Your gut is not happy with you. People share this picture all over.
Oh my! Are you serious?
They share it all over the place. Yeah, I get.
I feel like I need a better picture though.
It's just a screenshot.
That is amazing. You guys are the best.
Okay,
We're going to be able to clip a lot out of this because this is a whole tirade.
Well, keep going.
Okay, but you're so right about being able to twist data into saying anything that you want, right? So I just want to show you 2 other points about what this cohort of less than 8-hour eating window. So in some of these groups, like the 12 to 16 hour group, There were over 11, almost 12,000 people in that group. Guess how many people were in the less than 8 hour window, just for like statistical power?
What?
400.
Okay.
So you're even just now trying to extrapolate this out in a teeny tiny sample size. So that was another thing. This was the smallest group of people. But here's where it gets even weirder. The people who ate in the less than 8 hour window, this is just, you can't make this stuff up, which was not accounted for. They also had the highest BMIs, 29.9. They were 0.1% away from being obese. And that less than 8 hour cohort also had the highest percentage of smokers. Frank, do you think being obese and smoking cigarettes has anything to do with heart disease at all?
A little bit. Just a little bit.
Unbelievable, Frank. And yet, these brilliant researchers are telling you, oh, it's the 8 hour window that's causing the heart disease.
Right.
In a smaller sample size with obese smokers. Come on. This isn't even serious.
Again, but they're going back to the sun thing. Is it just because this is, people like to be contrarian? They know that more and more people are looking into things like fasting, and that people are seeing incredible changes made in their life because of it, and they just want to be the party pooper who pops a balloon? Is it that because it's just sensationalist to think of something that seems so healthy could actually be something that's going to crush your heart into oblivion? Or are they gatekeeping because they want us to continue to slide into an unhealthy state of dependency and pharmaceutical addiction? And I mean, you have maybe there's a balance of all three things.
Yes.
What? Okay.
I agree. I totally agree. And I'll tell you, Frank, it's like just like the sun. I'll say this about fasting: it's not a magic bullet, but it is physiological. It is physiologically appropriate, meaning that you can overdo fasting just like you can overdo sunshine. And if I'm working with somebody, I'm not guaranteed to tell you need to do X amount of fasting. There are situations where if the body is overly stressed, I'm thinking about somebody in my head right now. She took to fasting well, really great, but her life has been super busy with work and all these things and an added stress, and now fasting could nudge her over into that negative cortisol response, right? So the hormetic curve has now shifted and it's too much. So we've got to dial that back right now. But it's not that fasting is inappropriate. It's that too much fasting may be inappropriate, fasting at inappropriate times in your life, right? So it requires nuance. But the influencers that I see always go yes or no, black or white. And that is just as irresponsible as these headlines. Even people who tell you, oh, everybody should fast this way all the time. No, that's wrong as well. But all of those things. So this is heart disease we're talking about. So annual reviews of nutrition 2021. Alternate day fasting, a 5-2 diet, or time-restricted eating. Now, I only pulled papers that were an 8 hour window because I really wanted to match like for like here. Time-restricted eating in an 8 hour window may improve cardiometabolic health by lowering blood pressure, insulin resistance, and oxidative stress. Interesting. JAMA Internal Medicine 2022, 14 weeks of an 8 hour eating window. In this randomized clinical trial, time-restricted feeding was more effective for losing weight, improving diastolic blood pressure, and mood than eating over a window of 12 hours or more. The effects were clinically significant and on par with the DASH diet, which is the diet that everyone touts for being great for hypertension, and on par with endurance exercise. How about JAMA Network Open 2023, 6-month parallel group randomized controlled trial on type 2 diabetics with an 8 hour time-restricted feeding window. This randomized controlled trial found that time-restricted eating, dietary strategies without calorie counting was effective for weight loss and lowering hemoglobin A1C, which is a marker of long-term blood sugar control, compared with daily calorie counting as a sample of 20 of type 2 diabetics. And the last one, Obesity Silver Spring 2023, 90 participants, 25 to 75 years old with obesity, were randomized to either an 8 hour eating window or a greater than 12 hour window for 14 weeks. Everybody in the 8 hour window group had greater improvements in body weight, body fat, heart rate, insulin resistance, glucose control relative to the people in the control group. They also had greater experience of mood, including fatigue and anger.
Oh, that's the best part. And that's what I told you before, that it really is just my continued goal in life, dietarily, to just unlock energy and good mood. I mean, there's a lot of ways to work on mood and spiritual fulfillment and things like that. But on a metabolic mitochondrial level, you just
You
want
said the M word.
I know.
You open the door, Frank. Don't do that.
I know. You'll go all night.
But you're right. And the mood thing, I believe, is a result of switching metabolism to fatty acid metabolism, which we don't generally do in this society because, one, we eat too often, and two, our diets are primarily carbohydrate based, which will inhibit beta oxidation, which is the utilization of fats as fuels. And the byproduct of fat as fuels are ketone production. And ketone production is great for the brain because ketones are a source that the brain can use for fuel. And generally speaking, when people have high levels of ketones, their brains, like I do right now, because I'm 29 hours fasted. So my brain is running primarily on ketones, and so that gives a feeling of euphoria and mental clarity.
So you feel like $1 million right now.
Totally.
You son of a bitch.
I won't have eaten. I'll eat tomorrow at 48 hours, and in fact, I'm more productive. I don't have
How
to stop
often are you doing 48? Like that? How often you do that?
Not that often. I mean, a couple times a month.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, I do it always with your show because it just makes the most sense. I used to do it more often. I play around with it. I'm always experimenting with different things, so I'm probably not the best gauge because sometimes I'll do it, sometimes I won't. But again, it's always individual. I want anybody who's listening, it's like you don't have to do a 48-hour fast, but to give yourself some time away from food for so many reasons. You know what? I did find one more paper that was brand new, 2024, and this is a really good one because it's a
real quick. Because we're going to take it to the other side.
Yeah. So it's a meta-analysis of 34 different outcomes. And these are all associated with heart disease. So intermittent fasting, again, with that 8-hour window, reduced waist circumference, fat mass, fasting insulin was reduced, your LDL, which is everyone calls the bad cholesterol, your total cholesterol, your triglycerides, all of these things were improved with a simple time-restricted feeding. And this is, again, a meta-analysis that was just published last month. So I could do that all day, Frank. I could go through the medical literature and find you how many markers of metabolic health are improved with fasting. So to say that eating in a less than 8-hour window, which isn't even that aggressive of a fast, because again, you can still have your breakfast, lunch, and dinner in an 8-hour window. When you really think about it, that's just having breakfast at 10 a.m., a lunch, and then a dinner at 6. Is that even weird? It's not even that weird, right? But they're telling you that alone, think about that, is going to give you a 91% increased risk of heart disease. It's absurd on its face. And I just want to arm people with the knowledge. And again, fasting is very individual to your lifestyle. But to think that it's associated with a 91% increase in heart disease, I don't even have the words to explain how ridiculous that is.
I know. But of course, they publish at high speeds, and they copy and paste, and they get it out there as fast as they can. And I don't know, maybe they're just bored, or maybe they are just a little bit malicious. Maybe it's all the same.
But before, the last thing I'll say is, remember, the American Heart Association, who this poster came from, once upon a time, Cocoa Puffs, Lucky Charms, Trix, cereals all carried the heart healthy check mark.
Oh, yeah.
So not eating is very bad for your heart, but eating Lucky Charms, super heart healthy.
It's true. I remember that check mark, and people are like, okay, this is good.
Cocoa Puffs used to carry it too.
Yeah, I know. Because what is it? It's just a little bit of chocolate. It's nothing, but everything underneath it is grains, and they have the picture of the flowing wheat, the flowing grain, and I'm like, oh well, it is a part of a balanced breakfast.
The health minute I did for you that you played yesterday was all about that Cheerios propaganda, where they put on the box of Cheerios with the heart-shaped O's, and the boxes are labeled grandma, grandpa, mom, dad, like playing on your heartstrings. And I went in the health minute, I said the first 3 ingredients are non-organic oats, which are loaded with glyphosate, and I have the actual parts per billion of glyphosate in Cheerios right in front of me. 3 different types of sugar and seed oils. None of those are heart healthy, but yet the propaganda is so strong that they want you to believe that will be good for your heart. And condensing your eating window into 8 hours, which I just gave you all the research in just a few minutes, how many metabolic markers that improves, that's going to give you a 91% increased risk of heart disease. The institutions are completely broken, Frank.
Yeah. Well, listen, ladies and gentlemen, we have so much more to do. We got some of your thing. We have to get a quick Amos Miller update.
Yes.
I think I don't know. I think we were supposed to talk about pasteurization.
I did a full Substack on that, so people can find that, but I can we can touch on it.
Okay, we'll do that. So we got pasteurization. We got the Amos Miller update. We got stuff that's coming from you guys. We have a little bit on and more cultural extras that you're really going to love. It's very timely for this time of year. Quite frankly.tv. That's where you can find us right now. It's all powered by Pilled or Foxhole. All the same things. And of course, pilled.net. That link is out there too. Get to it and support independent media. It's 2 clicks. It's 2 clicks. Please, nothing needs to be spent except the time to click twice. And chat anywhere you want. Chat in the Gilded. Doesn't matter. Text. Call us up. But keep watching because we have a wonderful second half ahead of us. We will see you in just a moment.
The rest of the show is available exclusively at pilled.net. Follow the link in the description of the episode. Get signed up. It's that easy. Or head on over to quitefrankly.tv. Just press play. No paywalls, no censorship, no strings attached. So head on over, quitefrankly.tv, powered by Foxhole, and pilled.net.
It's intermission time, folks. Time out to press the like button. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen.
Welcome to intermission.
We'll be right back.
Yeah, intermission. Yeah, intermission.
Now entering, quite frankly.
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 Quite frankly. Quite frankly.
We all support quite frankly.
Not quite.
Quite frankly.
Let's go, Brandon.
Quite frankly.